Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Eliana and I'm a success and transformation coach. Here with me today I've got Dr. Paul Penn. Hi, a psychologist and also my husband. Welcome to our home. Today we'd like to talk to you about stress and how to manage it better in 5 easy steps. Now we can never get rid of stress, right? But we can certainly follow some management stress techniques that we can do to alleviate some of that pain. So let's get started. Paul, what is stress?
Well, stress in simple psychological terms is when you encounter a demand that you don't think you can deal with. So you've got an event on the horizon and it exceeds your perceived ability to cope. And that's when you start experiencing all of the kind of physiological and the psychological consequences of what we commonly refer to as stress.
Excellent. Now, tip number 1 for our viewers today, I'd like to mention that in coaching, we certainly give a few techniques on how to manage stress better. Amongst them would be breathing, would be meditation, would be yoga, would also be present moment focus techniques as well, bringing your attention back on things that you hear and see and smell and touch and taste. Or even techniques like having a playlist of happy music to help bring some of the stress down and helps with your breathing too.
Mm-hmm. And the one common feature of pretty much all that you mentioned there was this idea of breathing. And as silly as it sounds, that's the thing you fundamentally have to get right. And it's not just as simple as taking deep breaths. It's about looking at the pattern of your breathing. So it's about breathing, in a consistent way, in a regular fashion, and having a kind of consistent length of the intake of breath, how long you're holding the breath for, and how long you're taking to expel the breath. Because what that's doing is it's manipulating your heart rate variation. And what you want with your heart rate variation is for that to go down rather than up. Because if your heart rate is quite erratic and all over the shop, what that's going to tend to do is make you less effective physiologically. As soon as you start struggling for oxygen, you start getting a little bit panicky, a little bit on edge. You stop dealing with things as effectively. You start to feel this kind of sense of foreboding and slight alarm that you can't quite place why. And that tends to make you even more worried, which ruins your heart rate variation even more. So it becomes a vicious circle. So when you're stressed, one of the things you can really do to help yourself out, at least to stop you from compounding the stress, is just make sure that your breathing is consistent. The pattern of breaths that you take is being consistent, and that will keep your heart rate variation nice and low and will help you deal with the stress more effectively.
Excellent. One of the times that I see you really focusing on your breath is when we're flying somewhere. Your palms get sweaty and I can see you really focusing on the breathing.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with flying, that's because I'm travelling with you.
Oh yeah. Right. As tip number 2 to our viewers today, I like to say maintain a healthy balance. And this is the advice I would hear from doctors time to time, obviously as well. Having a healthy balance. Now, exercise is definitely one of the top things that we can do to manage stress. Anything to do with either going to the gym, going for a walk, running, dancing in your kitchen as well. Whatever you can do to keep moving. Now, the other things that we can do to maintain a healthy balance would be to avoid taking drugs, maybe reducing some of the caffeine, or reducing your alcohol intake, or focusing on sleeping better too, right?
Stop doing most of the good stuff, basically. So I think it's actually really important that a lot of the advice on stress is as much to do with what not to do as what to do. And one of the things that you have to accept right from the outset is that a little bit of stress here and there isn't a bad thing. It's a bit like a workout for you psychologically and physiologically. But chronic and sustained stress is not good for you psychologically or physiologically.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware of not falling into patterns of behaviour, like as soon as you encounter any kind of stress, reach in for the booze or the cigarettes and things like that. Because what they're probably going to do is physiologically they'll sort of mute some of the symptoms of stress, but they're not going to help you deal with the cause of the stress. And they're probably just going to make you feel a lot worse, which is going to make you less effective at dealing with the stressor, and that will in turn make you more stressed, and it's a vicious circle then. So paying attention to the way that you deal with stress and saying, look, am I dealing with this constructively, or am I just using things like alcohol and cigarettes to prop me up? It is a really good starting point, because if you're not dealing constructively with the stressor, then you're not making your life any easier, certainly in the long term.
Excellent, thank you. Now, on tip number 3, I'd love to say time management. It's amazing how often I see this in my clients. When they manage their time poorly, they get a lot more stressed. Some of the things that we suggest would be to not overcommit to something, to prioritize some of the tasks they need to be doing, to breaking tasks down, or even to delegating some of that responsibility as well to others. If you have a lot of kids at home and you've just come back from work, maybe delegating some of that dinner making to your partner as well can help.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's not feeling compelled to take on everything yourself. And, you know, one of the things we talked about in procrastination is this idea of breaking big tasks down into smaller, more manageable chunks. And, you know, we didn't touch on it in the context of stress, but if you think back to what stress is, which again is this demand that you perceive exceeds your ability to cope with, then one way you can address that very directly is to take that stress or that big event that you don't think you're going to be able to cope with and just break it down into its component parts, which will be much smaller and you'll perceive as being much more manageable and therefore likely to be much less stressful for you. So that's a really effective and really simple thing you can do, and you should do really early on when you start to, you know, associate an event with something that's stressful.
Excellent. Tip number 4 would be to connect to others. It's I find it really calming when I'm able to call a friend or someone in my family that loves me and can empathize sometimes with my stress as well. So reaching out to someone, they can really help, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I think people tend to do when they're stressed is they focus on the stressor. Because when we perceive a threat in our environment, regardless of what that threat is, what we tend to do is we become hypervigilant for it. We just focus on it. And the problem with that is then it starts to become all-consuming. And you know, something that becomes stressful as a part of your life, suddenly it almost seems like it's the whole of your life. And that's not the stressor, that's you forgetting to have a life outside of the stressor. And the one thing you can do to ameliorate that is just, even if you don't feel like it, you know, call up a friend, call up a family member, you know, and talk about the stressful situation. Because you'll often find one of the things that will do is give you perspective on the situation again and remind you that there is a world and a life outside of that stressor. And that it's not a life and death situation, you know, that you might have built it up to be in your mind. And that's the one consistent thing from psychology as well, that we know from longitudinal studies that have looked at people from, you know, the cradle to the grave. If there's one thing that predicts a long and happy life, it's having friends and family, it's having a social group that you feel integrated with. So, you know, don't neglect that, go straight to it, you know, if you're feeling stressed or you're feeling overwhelmed.
I should have mentioned also, call your husband.
Technically your husband is.
Nice one. And lastly, learn to say no. Now, this is something that I personally still struggle and work on it on a daily basis. Sometimes we have our plate full and we still take other tasks on because we don't like saying no. Is it as easy as it sounds, saying no? I mean, it should be, right?
I found it's not been easy for me to say no in this marriage, but no. So, no, but in all seriousness, this is the thing. I mean, again, going back to that definition of stress, is that basically you be having too much on your plate and not perceiving that you have the ability to deal with what you've got on your plate. Why on earth take on more? You're just making it more difficult for yourself.
But you want to just be nice. It's so hard to say no.
Yeah,
you feel like other people are, you know.
Yeah, well, what's going to happen? You may think you're helping someone, but are you really in a position to help them at that point because you've got other things on? So you probably won't be as helpful as you think you're going to be.
Yeah.
And it may be kinder to that person to say, at the moment I can't deal with this. Give me however long you need to, you know, clear the decks of the other stuff, and then get on with it. And I think also you have to be honest about why you feel that way. And something, you know, if you looked at cognitive psychology, and particularly the application of that to therapy, so rational emotive behaviour therapy, for example, Albert Ellis, the founder of that movement, said that a lot of the psychological distress we experience is because we have a very rigid and inflexible way of viewing the world, which demands us to be like, you know, if not perfect, pretty close to it all of the time. So he used to say, you know, I don't believe in masturbation. And it was, you know, the 3 musts. I must do well or I'm worthless. You must treat me well or you're worthless. And the world must be fair or it's a terrible place. And if you just stop making those demands, and particularly the first one, like, I must be seen to be, a good, helpful, infallible person all of the time, then you alleviate that need to say yes to people all of the time. And that's, I think, the first step to it. You just have to escape this notion that it's not okay to say no to people occasionally, because sometimes, we've all got priorities and we've all got different stuff on our plate, and sometimes you've got to clear the decks before you can help someone else.
Well, it's also when you say no to others, you're saying yes to yourself. And
Yeah,
we should
that's
be
a
saying
really
yes to
interesting,
ourselves more often, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Great.
It's a very interesting way of putting it. Yeah, good way of reframing it.
Excellent, brilliant. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Hope you guys found this useful. It was packed full of coaching and psychological tips. Let us know in the comments below what you found useful. Please share it with others. I'll also link Paul's channel and website below as well. Please subscribe to it. Don't forget to hit subscribe on this channel too, and do join us in the community family out there on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. See you guys soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.